Hi, this is Sean Hafer, and in this video we're going to be looking at filling up an object with other objects. So using some particles and physics to be able to fill up an object and then freeze that animation so that we can use that for a still without having to run that simulation over and over again. So let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into Cinema here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start with a plane. So this will be our sort of floor. And let's go ahead and create a platonic. And that's fine. And let's make that platonic 20 centimeters. So we've got that. And then I'm going to move it up, make sure I'm on my model tool, and just move it up a little bit from our plane here. Now using physics, you want to go over and we'll use some tags here. So I'm going to right click, go down to simulation tags, and we're going to use a rigid body. So when you put that on here, you'll see there's a lot of options here. We're going to leave everything at default for now. But what we'll do is let's just see how this works. If we now hit play, we'll see it plays, it rewinds, but it goes through the floor, right? So if we kind of look here in our view, we can see once we hit play, it falls down through and we're kind of stuck. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my main view here. And if we now go in here to our plane, what we want to do now is make this a collider body. So the same area, simulation tags, collider body. And now what that will do, it'll give it the attributes of physics without having it apply to gravity or have gravity apply to it. So it'll stay in place. So now if I go ahead and hit play now, we can see that little guy falls and hits the ground and settles, right? So that's the basics of physics. And we can get into a lot of other settings later on. But for this tutorial, we want to talk about how we could fill up an object with a bunch of other objects. So if you had a jar full of candy, or you had some, detergent pods that needed to go into a container, and placing those one by one would be very time consuming and take way too much effort, right? So what we'll do here is we'll go ahead, we'll leave our plane here, that's fine. And I'm going to go ahead and let's grab a cube, and we will go ahead and let's scale this down to maybe, or set that to, I don't know, let's say 150, 150, 150. All right, and on our position here, down here, I'm going to go ahead and move it up so it's on the floor plane there. So we'll make that 75. Oops, not size, sorry, position Y 75. Great. So now we've got that, and we will go ahead and I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And we've got our platonic up here. I'll just move that out of the way so we can see that. And let's go ahead, and what we'll do now is make this cube editable. I'm just going to make a little box for our objects to fall into. And then I'm going to go to my polygon selection, select my top face, right click and do an inner extrude, click and drag a little bit, and then I'm going to extrude down, so I can either hold down Control and drag, or you could do your extrude and go through. And so I'm going to just pull this down to where we've got a little floor area. Okay, great. So we've got that. That looks good. I'm going to go to our platonic again, so we know this is up here. Now if I did the same thing, and I can actually just go ahead and take my collider body here and drag it up to my cube if I want to do that. But basically we just want that cube to be a collider body. So if I rotate around here, now we can see if we hit play. Okay, now we've got some weirdness there, right? So what happened is this is just sticking to the top. So what we can do here, if that's happening, you want to go into your collider body And we want to come down to our dynamics and our collision, and we want to make sure that on shape, we want it to be static mesh. All right, and now that should take into effect what we've got here. So I'm going to rewind, hit play. There we go. So now that's fallen into our object. All right. Once we've got that set, now what happened before, since I had set that for auto on the plane, it was using just basically the bounding box of that plane. So when I made it to the cube, it was looking at this as just a cube, and it wasn't taking into effect that I'd moved that face down. So if you're getting things bouncing off the top of an opening, go down and make sure you go into that static mesh area. All right. So if we take that, now we could create a bunch of these and copy them and have them all fall in, but that takes a lot of time. So what we can do here is go ahead and use a particle system. So I'm going to, now a lot of people will use Xparticles, which is a plugin, which is really amazing and wonderful, but Cinema has its own particle system built in, and we can come in here again under that simulate, same area. We want to come down to particles, and we'll create what's called an emitter. Now what an emitter does, I'll just drag this up, and an emitter will emit particles, and by default along its z-axis. So if I hit play, we can see it's emitting these particles on the z-axis. Now what we can do, if we render though, let's go ahead and hit play. If I pause and hit render, we're not going to see those particles because they're just sort of a placeholder. Now what we want to do though is let's go ahead and grab our platonic, drag that into the emitter, make it a child, rewind, and hit play. Still don't see anything because what we have to do is in our emitter, go to your particle tab and click show objects. Now the thing you'll want to be careful with this, if it's a lot of geometry in a show in your object that you're emitting and you have a lot of particles coming out, that will become pretty intensive on your computer. So with the show objects, just be careful on what you're doing. With this, it should be fine. Now we can see as we're creating that, we've got our physics tab happening, right? So it's going ahead and falling down and then kind of keep moving around. But what we can do is let's go back and we will rotate our emitter. So I'm going to hit R for rotate. Grab this, hold down shift. So I clicked to 90 degrees. Now it's going to emit straight down, and we can come in and size our emitter as well. So if we look at this from the top, we're probably okay here, but I might size it down just a little bit. So if I go to my emitter, maybe it will make it 75 by 75. Okay. And we can move it down a little closer because it doesn't really matter. We're not interested in the animation in this case, but you might want them falling in for the animation. So you could have this emitter off site, you know, or off screen, and then it could drop down in. So when we play this, we'd get a nice little, you know, these guys coming in and doing their thing, and you can see them filling up. All right. And so that's a good thing there. Now what's happening here too is we want to look at, if we come over here and let's go ahead and take our emitter and we will move it down. Go to my E for my move tool, drag it down a little bit. And you can control in an emitter how many particles are created. So the birth rate in the editor versus birth rate in the renderer. So we're creating 10 per second. Visibility, how they are, stop emission, when it starts creating these. So if I set this to 10, or let's say 30, I can go ahead and start, boom, and it won't start emitting until 30 seconds. But then if I set stop at 60, rewind, you always want to rewind before you start a simulation, then it stops. Okay? So that is a great way to sort of control is when something's going to happen, how things are moving, etc. And then you can say how long they live. You can say their initial speed if they're rotating, right? So if you want them to come out in rotation, different rotations. And we're going to go ahead and let's start back at 0 again though. And I had set mine to 300 frames. You might still be at 90 frames. So just double check that you're a little longer, as long as it takes your simulation to run to fill up your object. And let's go ahead and hit play and see where we're at. So it's at 60 frames here. And that's not enough. So let me go back. I think before it was at 150. So let's make it 180. All right, rewind, play. Okay, add a few jump out. Now again, if you've got enough frames here, that'll be okay. If you've got those falling out, we could also, maybe that's because they were a little close together. So I could try and increase my emitter again. But I think that's fine for me. So if I look at that, that looks good. And maybe we want to create a new material and throw a little glass on the outside of that so we can see what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and just do load material preset and go to my materials and glass and just do that simple glass. All right, and we can throw that on the cube and we'll call that our box. And let's create a little color for our material, right? So let's just get in here, a little orange, and I'm going to throw that on my platonic. So now we can see those coming in, filling up. Few of them falling out. Let me go ahead and increase that size just a little there of my emitter. So I think we were at 75. All right, let's see if that helps us out. Yes, I have a few fallen out. That's okay. So the thing is when we have this emitting, we would always have to sort of run the simulation and then stop it where we want and then frame, our scene up and then do our render, right? So in this case, what we want to do is freeze this at a certain point. It's really easy to do. Okay, so what we want to do to make this so it's a static mesh, basically, where all of our objects are where we want them to be, we want to go ahead and bake the cache of this animation. So if I come into my platonic and I click on my tag here with my dynamics body tag, my rigid body, this is where we'll set this up, and we'll use the cache tab, which is the last one. But first off, I want to go ahead and hit C and make that editable. So if I rewind now, hit play, make sure it's still working. Looks good. Everything's going to be fine. All right, I'll rewind that back to the beginning. And we want to go ahead and click on our tag, go to our cache tab, and do bake all. It bakes the simulation. Now, the way we can tell it's done it is it's changed the icon a little bit, right? And now has a little rectangle up there instead of the sphere. And then we can also see that if we scrub, we now can scrub this, where we couldn't scrub it before. Okay? So now you know that's baked. So what we can do either scrub it forward or just play again, however you feel. And we want to get it to a point where it's done emitting. That looks good. And we'll just pause there. So now all you do is go up to your emitter, hit C for make editable. And now we can see it creates all of our platonics in here. Now we can grab that and just move it around. It's now just a null, and we can move that around. So if you needed a hero object that you needed to pull out of here, you could always just go in and start selecting these guys and actually move it if you needed to. But it's a great way to quickly fill something up, get what you need to do. And then you can also come in there, and if you needed to change texture on a couple of different ones or whatever, you could do that as well. So let's say we copy this material and we make it green, we could go ahead and just say like, all right, let's go Command or Control click every other one. Something like that. And then I could just go ahead and select this, right click my material down here, my green material, and do an apply, right? And then that'll apply it out to there. So then when we render this one, we've got our nice object. We've got our little objects all in there. We've got our box, our clear box. And that's something that now won't require a lot of dynamic simulation to create. So you can just move this around, rotate it, do whatever you need to do, and we're good to go. So I hope that was helpful, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Thanks for watching.